Penguin Random House Audio presents The Feel-Good Effect. Reclaim your wellness by finding small shifts that create big change. This is the author, Robyn Conley Downs. To Andrew and Elle, this is all because of you. This is all for you. Introduction. 7 months after my daughter Elle was born, I stood in the middle of our living room in tears. And I'm not talking a few tears that could easily be brushed away. I'm talking a full-out epic kind of meltdown. The morning had started predictably enough, waking up early, rushing to feed myself and Elle, frantically getting ready, throwing everything together for the day, trying to get out the door. But right before I was about to leave, my husband, Andrew, asked me what time I planned to be home from work. Seems like an innocent enough question, right? Wrong. To me, at that particular moment in life, 7 months postpartum and trying desperately to figure out a new normal, that small question triggered something much bigger. The problem was, I wasn't actually sure when I'd be home. Beyond that, I couldn't see how I was going to handle all the responsibilities piled up on my to-do list for the day. And I didn't know how I was going to find even one spare moment to take care of myself. Everything felt heavy. At that moment, I wondered, how had my life become so complicated, so difficult to navigate? When had taking care of myself become such a low priority? What's more, I wasn't exactly sure how I'd arrived at this point. Clearly, adding a tiny human to the mix wasn't making things easier, but these feelings had deep roots, going back years into my past. To be honest, I had a history of always adding more to my plate without ever taking anything away. I was a pusher, and I had a tendency to ignore my health and happiness in pursuit of achievement and success. I was striving to have it all even though I didn't have a clear sense of what having it all actually meant. And I never stopped to ask myself how I felt because my mental and physical health seemed irrelevant and not something I had time to prioritize. How to not feel good. The truth is, I'd been teetering for years, advancing up the corporate ladder, attending school on nights and weekends, logging countless hours in front of a computer, all of which had taken a huge toll on both my health and happiness. My motto had always been, just push through, yet even as I strived to do all the things, I frequently felt like I wasn't making any progress. Yes, I was grateful for all the gifts in my life, but despite my good fortune, I felt a crippling sense that nothing was good enough. Lying in bed at night, I'd run through a mental list of things not yet accomplished, and in the morning, I'd wake up with a general sense of already being behind. On that sunny September morning, the real reason for my breakdown was that I was convinced the problem was with me, that I just needed to find more willpower, to be a little more motivated, to really get my act together. I blamed my struggles not on how I was structuring and approaching my life, but rather on my obvious lack of self-control. It seemed there were only 2 options: go all in on everything, job, friendships, relationships, and a litany of life responsibilities, or just give up altogether. And at that moment, the giving up option looked pretty appealing. Plus, I felt like I was the only one struggling, the only one who couldn't figure it out. Looking around at other people's lives, I could list 24 ways I felt I wasn't measuring up. All my friends seemed to have it more together than I did. They seemed to balance work and family and taking care of themselves with such ease. Why couldn't I do the same? I wanted desperately to figure out how they were doing it. In truth, I wanted my own slice of that magical, perfect, healthy life. You know the one I'm talking about. The one with an hour-long morning routine, not including meditation, and a perfectly composed organic smoothie. The one with incredibly productive work weeks in which everything on the to-do list gets done. The one with 6-pack abs resulting from a 7-day-a-week workout routine, including cardio, stretching, high-intensity strength training, and deeply restorative yoga. The one with every meal planned and everything prepped ahead, all cooked from scratch. The one where I had time to spare for deep breathing and no screens and plenty of sleep and reading and time with my family. The one where I never had a negative thought. Eventually, I pulled myself together that morning in the living room, resigned to another long commute, got in the car, and drove to work. Stuck in traffic on the way, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had to give. As I continued to reflect on my situation, I knew things had to change, knew I needed to change. As I eventually pulled into my parking spot at work, I knew that I couldn't continue down the path I was on, that it simply wasn't sustainable for myself or for my family. At that moment in the parking lot that September, I vowed to make a change. The only problem? I had no idea where to start. If I knew what to do, I thought to myself, wouldn't I already be doing it? Go big or go home. As the days passed, I continued to think about my conundrum, and I began to formulate a plan. And then I decided to do what I always did. I committed to go big. The week following that living room meltdown, I vowed to make big, drastic, life-altering changes. Determined to find that magical, perfect, healthy life, I promised myself that things were going to change. In my mind, this was an all-or-nothing situation, and I wanted it all. So with every ounce of motivation I could pull together, I threw myself into every wellness fad and trend like it was my job. Ignoring the fact that I already had a full-time job and a family, I crammed 60-minute daily workouts into my currently packed schedule. I gave up entire food groups, jumped from diet to diet, convinced that eventually I'd find the perfect one. I spent Sundays planning meals and prepping the daylight hours away. I made pages of lists and checked every box. I bought all the productivity planners, spending more hours than I'd like to admit coming up with elaborate color-coded outlines to fit everything in. I pushed through. I disciplined. I marshaled my willpower. I forced myself to think positively, and I felt guilty when I wasn't able to constantly do so. When things didn't go as planned, and I felt like I'd fallen off the wagon, I'd mentally beat myself up until I got back on track. And do you know what happened? It worked. That go big or go home approach got results. As in fantastic, absolutely exhilarating, totally amazing, short-term results. I know, you probably thought I was going to tell you that it didn't work, but that's not the truth. After going to extremes, I got the kind of outward results that had friends stopping me on the street to ask what I was doing. All of a sudden, I was a success story, a real-life embodiment of the coveted after picture. Everyone wanted to know what had changed, what was my big secret, because that's the thing about extremes, deprivation, and willpower. They can work really well for a short period of time. My new way of eating had cleared up my skin and my body felt lighter. The strenuous workout regimen had made me stronger too. True, my energy was zapped by the end of the day, and I felt behind and mildly frantic most of the time, but I didn't care. This was working. I was doing it. But even though my body was changing physically, my mind was still stuck in the same old thought patterns. What is wrong with you? Is this the best you can do? Really? Can't you get it together for good? Everyone else seems to be able to figure this out, so why can't you? The ugly truth was that even though I was achieving what appeared to be success on the outside, my mindset was causing me to feel bad even when I should have been feeling good. I'd hit a goal, but I couldn't stop to appreciate the moment because I was constantly focused on the future. Addicted to the short-term results, I found myself desperately seeking the next best thing and becoming frustrated when results started to plateau. Still stuck in the comparison game, I found it difficult to stop using other people as a measure of my own success. I was striving and pushing, looking around at what everyone else was doing, and then panicking because my results were starting to seem unsustainable. How could I possibly keep up with it all? Plus, I had the sneaking suspicion that my approach was causing me to miss the beautiful life I had right in front of me. Simply put, the more I strived, the worse I felt. The unrealistic standards, the go big or go home approach, the everyone else can, so why can't I dichotomy, it all started to catch up with me. And then it caught up with me in a big way. Unable to keep up with the impossible, overly complicated situation I'd created, I started to fall behind, having no way of...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?